road into Oceanview curved along the coast in long, bright stretches. Nora drove with the windows open, her arm resting on the door as wind lifted strands of her hair. Sunlight flickered across the windshield in soft pulses, and the horizon seemed to widen with every mile. For the first time in a long while, she found herself looking ahead instead of glancing in the mirror behind her. The air carried the scent of driftwood mixed with the lemon cleaner from a station she had stopped at earlier in the day. It felt like a reminder that she was somewhere between what she had left and what she hoped she might find. When the town finally appeared, it did so without hurry. Rooftops rose above low dunes, and shop signs painted in weathered colors hung from wooden posts. Laundry swayed on lines behind small porches. A dog barked down a side street, and a buoy bell rang from somewhere beyond sight. Everything moved with an easy rhythm that seemed shaped by the tide. Her new cottage sat at the end of a narrow lane streaked with sand. The shutters had faded under years of salt air, and the porch dipped a little on one side. The boards beneath her feet groaned as she stepped onto them. She rested her hand on the doorframe and let the ocean breeze pass over her. It carried the scent of old wood and something gentler, as though the house had been waiting for someone to fill its quiet. It was not flawless. The roofline sagged, the windows needed attention, and the yard had grown wild. Even so, the light on its surface made it seem willing to begin again. Nora released a breath she had not realized she was holding. She pushed the door open. Sunlight filtered through the windows, catching dust in the stillness. She placed her first box on the floor and set her palm on the wall. The space felt small, but steady. She whispered that it was real, more to herself than to the room. At the window, she brushed dust from the glass with her sleeve. Beyond the panes, Oceanview shifted into its evening. Fishermen worked at the pier, while their shouts rose and fell with the movement of the water. A kite floated above the dunes, and a distant screen door closed with a familiar clap. A set of wind chimes answered with a soft, lingering ring. She watched until the light changed on the floorboards. Voices drifted from the street, bicycles creaked past, and the sound of waves pressed against the edges of the town. It all blended into something she had not felt in a long time. The ordinary life beyond the window did not demand anything from her. It simply continued. At last she turned, took her keys, and stepped into the evening air. Warm air met her as she walked down the path to the car. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, listening to gulls overhead and the steady wash of the surf, then started the engine. The road into town wound between dunes and low houses. She passed fences tangled with morning glory, children playing in the sand beside the street, and a cyclist balancing a loaf of bread under one arm. The air rushing through the window carried the smell of seaweed and a trace of sugar from a bakery nearby. She parked beneath a leaning palm and stepped out. Gravel shifted under her shoes. The ocean hummed beyond the buildings. She followed the sounds of conversation into the town's heart shop doors, stood open, bells chiming as locals moved in and out. A painter touched a signboard with a careful hand. Two visitors bent over a map, trying to decide on a path. Everything here moved at a calm pace that welcomed her without expecting anything in return. She wandered past a row of storefronts. A thrift shop displayed faded postcards in its window. A florist arranged sea lavender in tall jars. The air carried the smell of cinnamon and coffee. When she reached the bakery, she paused. A couple sat at a small table, sharing a bite of pie and laughing in an easy way she had almost forgotten existed. The sound stirred a memory she had tried not to touch. She continued toward the boardwalk, walking past mailboxes marked by sun and salt, doors bright with colors chosen long ago, and a cat sleeping on a sill with its tail twitching in time with the breeze. The scent of yeast and brine filled the air. Near the pier, children chased gulls, and the water shone under the late afternoon sun. By the time the light lowered, her steps had grown slow, and her thoughts quiet. She followed the path toward the beach. The tide moved with a steady rise and fall, and she let the cool edge of the surf brush her shoes. The touch startled her awake. She crouched, placed her hand in the water, and felt it slip away between her fingers. Something inside her steadied in that small moment. Streetlights flickered to life along the lane as she walked back to her car. The air cooled and carried the scent of night and salt. She opened the door, set her bag on the passenger seat, and slid in. For a moment, she simply sat there, hands resting on the wheel, letting the quiet settle around her. She shifted into reverse to pull out of the tight parking space. The mirror caught a sudden flash of metal that she did not have time to register. A hard thud followed. The car lurched, and her breath stopped short. She gripped the wheel, heart pounding, and looked over her shoulder. A van sat behind her, still running. She hurried out, her pulse loud in her ears. The driver stepped out. He was tall, sun-browned, and carried the casual confidence of someone who spent long hours near the water. His shirt bore streaks of sand, and surf wax stained his hands. His expression held a trace of surprise, but not annoyance. Nora approached with an apology already forming. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention." He lifted his hand in a calm gesture. "It's all right. No need to panic." He crouched beside the bumper and ran his hand along the surface. When he stood again, she felt the tension in her shoulders ease. "Nothing to worry about," he said. "This street is notorious for tight parking. Most newcomers bump something their first week." Her breath steadied a little. "I just arrived. It has been a long day." He nodded, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I thought so." After a brief pause, he offered a small smile. "I'm Eli." She returned it, though she still felt slightly shaken. "Nora." "Well, Nora," he said, her name settling easily in his voice. "Welcome to Oceanview. The corners get friendlier after you learn where they are." She let out a quiet laugh. "Thank you, and again, I'm really sorry." "No need," he replied. "Truly, no harm done." The awkwardness between them softened. She glanced at the bumper again and gave a more genuine laugh. "I guess this is one way to meet the neighbors." He laughed with her. "You're doing fine. This place tests everyone at the start." They exchanged a few more words before he stepped back toward his van. "See you around, Nora," he said through the open window. She blinked, surprised he remembered her name. "See you," she replied. The van rumbled down the lane, leaving dust lit by the last of the day. She stood there, letting the quiet settle again. Laughter drifted from somewhere nearby, and a flag snapped in the wind. She felt the town's gentle rhythm moving around her, patient and steady. She returned to the cottage and drew the curtains aside. The fabric tore at the seam, letting the last of the light slip in and settle on the floor. She swept the room, letting the motion calm her breath. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Adam's name filled the screen. She did not need to hear his voice to know what he would say. He had used the same tone whenever she thought about leaving. She had waited for him to change for far too long. She let the call fade and watched the screen darken. A quiet steadiness took its place. As night gathered, she sat on the floor among open boxes. The sea turned smooth in the distance. The room hummed with both memory and possibility. She closed her eyes and listened to the faint sounds carried on the wind. Somewhere, laughter mixed with the rhythm of the tide, and she found herself hoping she could learn how to live within that quiet. Morning light slipped through the open window and drew a pale line across the ceiling. Nora woke before her alarm and lay still, unsure whether habit or a quiet sense of hope had brought her up from sleep. The cottage held a deep, complete silence. No second toothbrush by the sink, no weight on the other side of the bed, no voice coming from another room. The quiet could have felt like loneliness, but for the moment it simply existed, waiting to be named. She watched the curtain lift and fall in the breeze. The fabric was worn at the edges, yet still soft. When she finally rose, the floor met her feet with a cool sigh. The boards were uneven and smooth with age. She pulled on a cardigan, walked to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. The house spoke in small sounds. Pipes ticked as they warmed. Wood settled with a low creak. A pane in the window gave a faint groan where it did not quite fit the frame. Paint had flaked along the trim, and one cabinet door hung a little crooked. Even so, the place felt solid beneath the flaws, as if its very age carried a kind of reassurance. She ran her finger along the chipped edge of the counter and listened to the quiet. It did not feel hollow. It felt expectant. In her old life, the background had never stopped. The refrigerator had hummed. The television had filled the room. And Adam had used noise to cover what neither of them wanted to say. That house had been full of sound, but had held very little life. Here, the only steady hum drifted up from the sea. When the kettle sang, she poured coffee into a mug and carried it to the window. The warmth of the cup eased into her hands. Beyond the window, the dunes shone in the early light while the grass bowed and rose in slow waves. A movement near the water caught her eye. Eli stood waist-deep in the surf, steadying a small boy as he tried to climb onto a board. Even at a distance, she could hear his tone. Calm even, touched with a low laugh. The boy wobbled, toppled, then burst up from the water with a grin and droplets streaming down his face. Eli laughed with him, not at him. The sound traveled over the sand as if the air itself made room for it. Nora realized she had been holding her breath. The ease between them felt foreign to her now. There was no performance in it, no edge, just trust that falling was part of learning. For a moment, she wondered when she had last felt that kind of safety with anyone. The boy climbed back onto the board. Eli steadied him once more, patient and sure, both of them set against the wide reach of the sea. Nora took a sip of coffee. Steam rose across her face. She noticed then that her mouth had curved into a small smile. Something in her chest loosened, just enough to let in a little light. Later that morning, she walked into town. Oceanview was waking. Doors opened. A screen snapped shut somewhere behind her. The clink of dishes came from the cafe at the corner. A woman rode past on a bicycle with a basket of lemons balanced at the front. A painter rinsed brushes in a metal pail. Blue water streaking across the pavement like a piece of sky that had fallen and broken apart. As Nora followed the main street, a warm breath of air drifted out from an open doorway. It carried the smells of cinnamon and fresh coffee, with a trace of salt beneath it. She slowed without meaning to. Laughter rose from the cafe, followed by the sound of cups touching saucers, and a tune from an old radio that seemed to know how not to rush. She paused at the threshold and looked in. Light spread across worn tile and polished wood. Spoons turned upside down in mugs. People leaned close to one another, speaking quietly. A small community held within 4 walls. It felt like the center of the town's pulse. A sign above the door read, "Shoreline Cafe." She rested her hand on the frame for an instant, then stepped in. The scent wrapped around her at once. Cinnamon and coffee warmed the air, and the sea's trace lingered under it. The walls wore a soft blue that was neither sky nor water, but something that sat between both. It was the same color she had tried on one corner of her own wall the previous evening. She stood at the counter longer than she meant to. The woman behind it, whose eyes had the steady look of someone who had seen many seasons pass, followed Nora's gaze. "We repaint every spring," the woman said. "The light shifts with the tide. This shade seems to keep up with it." Nora nodded. "I think I am starting to understand that." "You settling in, darling?" the woman asked. "Trying to," Nora replied. The woman placed a croissant on a small plate and slid it toward her. Her smile reached her eyes. "Take your time. This town has a way of giving back what you stopped chasing." The remark settled in Nora's thoughts with a simple weight that felt true. She looked up. "You sound like you speak from experience," she said. "Maybe I do." The woman dried her hands on a towel, then held one out. "I'm Lila." "Nora," she answered, taking the offered hand. "Well, Nora," Layla said, resting an elbow on the counter. "Welcome to Oceanview, and welcome to coffee that was not brewed beside a gas pump." Nora laughed, quiet at first, then easier. The sound surprised her, more for its freedom than its volume. For the first time since she had arrived, she felt a small tug toward connection that had nothing to do with duty, and everything to do with being seen. She took her mug and chose a table near the window. The cafe buzzed with low conversation. Names passed between people she did not yet know. Plans for the weekend, weather observations, jokes shared without caution. She listened more than she drank, letting the voices weave around her. Beyond the glass, the striped awning shifted in the breeze. Families and couples walked up and down the street. For a brief moment, she wondered what it would be like to belong to this pattern instead of passing through it. The thought warmed her in a way that startled her, like sunlight falling on a window long kept closed. The afternoon stretched in front of her. She visited the market and ran her fingers over shells laid out on tables, each marked by the path of the sea. She walked the boardwalk while children chased gulls in shrill circles. At the end of the pier, the water shimmered under the sun, turning the surface into something that looked almost metallic. Everything in town ran on small rituals, people pausing to greet one another, towels shaken out on the sand, chairs turned toward the view. By the time she returned to the cottage, the air there felt changed. The ocean scent remained, but now it mingled with traces of soap and the faint smell of the cardboard boxes she had opened. She moved from window to window and tested the shutters. Each hinge gave a weary protest. Some held, others shifted under her hand. She took a small toolbox from beside the door and knelt by the first window. The screwdriver sat awkwardly in her palm, but she worked slowly until the screws tightened and the hinge drew firm. Each turn of metal against wood produced a thin squeal that reminded her of the effort it took to hold anything together. When she finished, she stood and listened to the new stillness. The shutters no longer rattled. On one wall, she pried open a can of paint and dipped in a brush. She traced 3 small rectangles with careful strokes: a soft white, a muted gray, and the same blue she had seen on the cafe walls. The colors caught the fading light in different ways. She stepped back, studying them as evening gathered. The blue, in particular, seemed to echo the dunes and the line of the sea beyond town. Her fingertips were streaked when she pressed them lightly to the wall. The smudges remained small and imperfect, and for the first time, she felt as if the room might be willing to hold her story as well as its own past. Beyond the doorway, the air sharpened as night approached. She stepped into the lane. At the far end, Eli unloaded boards from the back of his van. Sand dusted his legs, and his hair caught the low sun. For a moment, Nora considered turning back. The old instinct to retreat nudged at her, but she stayed where she was. "Hey!" she called, her voice carrying more steadily than she expected. If someone wanted to learn how to surf, where would they begin? Eli paused at his work and looked up. A faint line formed between his brows, then smoothed as he smiled. "That depends," he said. "Are we talking about someone who is already confident, or someone who mostly wants to stand without getting knocked over?" She laughed and brushed a curl away from her face. "Let us assume the second." "In that case," he replied, gesturing toward the beach beyond the houses, "here is as good a place as any. Low tide is tomorrow morning. The water will be kinder then." She folded her arms and studied him. "Kinder waves. It sounds like something you might print on a shirt." He smiled. "Maybe. They tell you a lot about yourself, especially when you are pushing too hard." His tone carried no boast, only a quiet certainty that made her look at him a little longer. "So," she said, tilting her head, "if a person appeared on the sand tomorrow morning, would they find you there?" "I expect so," he answered. 7:30. Bring coffee if you want me to be fully awake." "I think I can manage that," she said. "Then we have a plan," he replied. He turned back to the boards and tightened a strap. When he looked up again, his expression had softened. There was no pressure in it, only an open, calm welcome. "See you tomorrow, Nora." She hesitated, surprised that her name came so easily to him. "See you," she said. On the walk back to the cottage, she noticed that her mouth had curled again into a small smile that stayed even when she was alone. That night, she sat on the floor with her back against a half-unpacked box and scrolled through her phone without much attention until a familiar pattern of words drew her eye. An auto-transcribed message from Adam waited on the screen. Her thumb hovered above it. Old habits urged her to open it, to step once more into a story she had already left. She could hear the tone he would have used, careful, regretful, crafted to keep her near. It had worked for a long time. It did not have to work now. She deleted the message without reading further. The text vanished, leaving only the bare surface of the screen and her own faint reflection. Through the open window, the breeze carried the scent of the sea and a hint of wood smoke from somewhere down the lane. The sound of the tide reached her in slow, steady pulses. For the first time since she had arrived, the pull of the water did not unsettle her. It felt like an invitation to stay. The wetsuit tested her patience before the ocean did. Nora stood on the worn planks in front of Eli's surf shack and tried to pull the zipper up her back. The neoprene clung to her, tight and unfamiliar, and each tug seemed to make it resist more. She gave a low, breathy laugh at herself and tried again. Her pulse moved a little too fast. She told herself it was the chill of the morning and the sound of the waves folding over themselves, not the awareness that Eli was somewhere behind her, moving with that unhurried confidence the regulars at the beach seemed to share. From her window above the dunes, she had watched people like him glide across the water. Their balance had looked natural, as if the sea had agreed to hold them. Now, barefoot on the boards that smelled of salt and wax, she felt both eager and out of place, like someone arriving late to a class where everyone else already knew the lesson. The zipper caught halfway. "Of course it would," she muttered, giving it another pull. A quiet laugh came from behind her. "Need some help?" Eli asked. She turned, cheeks warm from the effort and from something she did not name. "I am trying to convince myself I have it under control." He stepped closer, still smiling. "May I?" She nodded and let her hands fall. His fingers caught the metal tab and worked it upward in one smooth motion. "Is it always this difficult?" she asked. "Only the first few times," he said. "After that, it feels normal, or at least less like a wrestling match." Her laugh came more easily than she expected. Perhaps that was the real reason she had said yes to the lesson. She wanted to remember what it felt like to attempt something without already knowing the outcome. He stepped back and leaned on the rail of the shack. "Does the suit feel strange?" "Like it belongs to someone more capable," she said. He grinned. "I tell people it is like a seal giving you a hug. Not everyone finds that reassuring." "That is slightly better than how I would have described it," she replied. The beach stretched out in front of them, pale under clear morning light. The water moved in gentle lines toward the shore. The air held a clean sting of salt and sunscreen. She followed him down the sand with the board tucked under her arm, awkward and heavier than she had imagined. The first rush of water around her ankles felt shockingly cold. She gasped and laughed at the same time. "You all right?" Eli called over his shoulder. "I am not sure yet," she answered. "Good place to start," he said. "First rule is simple. You do not fight the waves. You let them pass and choose the right one." "That sounds a lot like advice you could apply elsewhere," she said. He glanced back at her. "It probably is. The ocean does not argue. It just keeps reminding you where you stand." She stepped farther in. The sand shifted under her feet in soft pulls. The water climbed over her calves, then her thighs, tugging at her balance. Each step asked her whether she trusted it enough to continue. Her heart thudded in her chest. She drew a breath and kept going until the surface reached her waist. The board floated beside her, bumping her hip. She looked over at Eli. His shoulders were relaxed and steady above the waterline. Seeing that settled something in her. He nodded toward the horizon. "Here comes your first one." The wave approached in a low rise. She tried to remember everything he had explained on the sand, but the water reached her sooner than she expected. It lifted the board and knocked her legs out from under her. She went under in a wash of sound and cool pressure, then broke the surface with a cough and a startled laugh. The next swell caught her while she was still recovering and took her legs again. By the time a fifth wave passed, she had stopped trying to brace against every movement. She let herself rise and fall, clumsy and unsteady but present. Eli moved closer as she found her footing. "Still with me?" he called. "I believe so," she replied, breath coming fast. "Remember to breathe before you fall," he said. "It makes the landing easier." "That is an interesting way to encourage a person," she answered, but she smiled when she said it. For a moment, the only sounds were the water and their shared laughter. The fear that had pressed at the back of her ribcage softened. The wind carried the smell of salt across her lips. The board bobbed at her side. Another small set of waves rolled in. This time, with Eli's quiet instructions guiding each step, she felt the pull beneath her feet and tried to move with it instead of against it. Once or twice, she managed to rise on the board just long enough to feel a brief glide across the surface before slipping back into the water. Each fall ended in a mix of surprise and laughter that the sea took away at once. For a while, she stopped thinking about anything beyond the next breath and the next attempt. The quiet phone on her counter, the empty bed, and the questions that had followed her to town slid to the edges of her mind. The water demanded her full attention. It became, in its own way, a relief. When they finally turned back toward the shore, the sun had climbed higher, and the sand warmed beneath their feet as they trudged to dry ground. Her arms ached, her knees stung where they had met the board and the seabed. Wet hair clung to her neck, and there was sand in the crease of her palm. But there was also a lightness she had not felt in months. She glanced at Eli. He carried his board with an easy grip and a quiet smile that spoke more of satisfaction than pride. They sat on the steps of the surf shack with cold tea in their hands. The boards rested in the sand below. Gulls wheeled above them and cried into the clear sky. Between them, the silence felt calm and full, rather than strained. "You did well," he said. "I fell more than I stood," she replied. He watched her trace a line through the condensation on her glass. "You kept standing back up. That matters more." She looked at him, half amused and half curious. "You say that like you have made a study of it." "I have had a lot of practice," he said. "Sometimes persistence is all you have. Sometimes it is enough." His certainty washed over her gently and stayed. For years, she had treated life like a contest to win, bracing against each new change. Perhaps there was another way to move through it, one that looked more like learning to balance than trying to conquer. Later that day, back at the cottage, she picked up a hammer instead of a board. The cabinet hinge by the sink had sagged since she arrived. She set a small nail, lined the metal in place, and tapped with care. The rhythm of the blows reminded her of the waves, steady and focused. The hammer slipped once and caught the side of her thumb. Pain flared, followed by a bead of blood. She hissed softly, then laughed under her breath. "Progress, not perfection," she said, echoing the thought that rose. She wrapped a bandage around the cut and tried again, slower this time. The hinge settled into place with a firm, clean sound. When she tested the door, it opened and closed without wobbling. A knock sounded at the open front door. Eli stood there with the late light behind him, holding a folded scrap of paper. "I realized I never gave you this," he said. "I am trying to work on my professionalism." She wiped her hands on a rag and stepped closer. "Is that my official schedule?" "It is," he said. "Subject to tide and weather, of course." She took the paper and smiled. "I suppose I can accept those terms." He glanced past her into the cottage. "You have been busy." Tools lay on the counter. One wall carried 3 blocks of color. The room felt more like a work in progress than a blank space. "I am trying to make it feel like mine," she said. "Do you want help?" he asked. She shook her head, then softened the refusal. "No, I need to do some of it on my own." He studied her for a moment and accepted the answer. "Fair enough. Just watch your thumb." She laughed, then looked down at the bandage she had almost forgotten. The small injury marked both her clumsiness and her effort. "Already learning," she said, flexing her fingers. "Good," he replied, his smile widening. "Everyone in Oceanview has at least one mark from fixing something. Consider it a local initiation." Their shared laughter faded into a comfortable quiet that felt like the beginning of something steady and unforced. When he left, the cottage did not feel quite as empty as it had on that first evening. The scent of salt and wood still drifted through the air, but now it mingled with fresh paint and the warmth of tea. Her hands were tired, and her muscles ached in familiar ways. She sat by the window and watched the sky fade toward evening. Along the shore, the tide rolled in and out, patient and sure. She could feel the rough outline of a new life taking shape, not smooth yet, but real. By their second lesson, Nora had already learned the pattern of Eli's mornings. His truck reached the lane just as the light over the dunes began to soften. The sound of the engine had become as familiar to her as the distant pull of the tide beyond her window. Boards lay stacked in the back, grains of sand still clinging to the wax and dark patches of water drying on the wood. His hair was damp from an early swim, his skin warmed by the sun, and the faint smell of salt followed him when he walked. She recognized him now by more than his truck, the way he moved with quiet focus as he lifted boards to the sand, the low whistle he sometimes gave without noticing when he worked alone, the calm presence he carried into every small task. Being near that steadiness eased something with her that had stayed tight for a long time. The space between them had changed since the first awkward day. Conversation came more easily. Silences no longer pressed on her nerves. She had started to look forward to the small details that were becoming familiar. The squint he gave the water when he judged the waves, the sound of his laugh when she poked fun at herself. That morning, she reached the shack before him, board under her arm, coffee in hand. It felt like an offering to the new rhythm they were forming. "You are early," he said as he stepped out of the truck, a smile touching his mouth. "So are you," she replied. "Looks like we are getting the timing down." Her nerves had settled into something calmer, not certainty but ease. They walked toward the water, boards on their hips, and the tide slid over their feet in gentle runs that made it feel as if the morning welcomed them. "Ready?" he asked. "As much as I ever am," she said. The water held a cooler edge than the day before. The sky wore a soft silver sheen, and thin clouds gathered high above the horizon. Small ridges rose on the surface where the wind touched it. They paddled out side by side. Her strokes had grown smoother, and she tipped less often. When she did slip, she surfaced with unforced laughter instead of apology. Eli grinned each time she came up, hair against her cheeks, eyes bright with effort. For a while, she stopped worrying about how she appeared or whether she was doing it well. She matched her breath to the lift and fall of the water and let herself move with it. Later, they sat on the sand, sharing a towel and a bottle of water. Grains clung to her legs, warmth rested on the top of her head. Eli spoke about the children he taught, how some arrived determined to conquer the ocean and others flinched at every splash. "The ones who last," he said, "are the ones who pay attention. They listen to what the water is telling them." "You make it sound like a person," she said. "It may as well be," he answered. "It has moods, it remembers, it calls you out when you stop being honest with yourself." Their smiles stayed a little longer that day. An understanding flowed between them, quiet but present. They were both, in their own ways, learning how not to sink. When it was time to leave, neither moved quickly. They walked the length of the shore with boards under their arms, leaving a line of footprints that the tide reached for and erased. A low sound reached them from far away, more felt than heard. Eli glanced toward the sky. Clouds had thickened near the horizon. "There will be a storm tonight," he said. "Nothing serious. The air is changing." Nora shaded her eyes and looked up. The sky still showed large patches of blue, but the light held a faint oddness, like a room waiting for someone to speak. "You can tell from that?" she asked. "You learn to feel it after a while," he said. "The air gets heavier, as if it is holding something back." His words touched a place in her that had nothing to do with weather. "I know that feeling," she said. "The waiting?" "For what?" he asked. She let out a small breath. "Whatever comes next, I suppose." He watched her for a moment and then nodded as if he understood. "The hardest part is not knowing if what is coming will clear things up or break them open," he said. She looked out toward the water. The wind tugged at the hem of her shirt and carried a thin scent that hinted at rain. "Maybe it does both," she said. He smiled slightly. "That sounds about right." The quiet that followed did not feel empty. It settled around them, full and still. She found that she did not want to step away from it too quickly. Back at the truck, Eli loaded the boards and looked toward her bike leaning against the fence. "Let me give you a ride home," he said. "You can bring the bike in the back." She did not argue. He lifted the bike with easy strength and set it gently beside the boards. The care in the simple gesture touched her more than she expected. The cab of the truck smelled of salt and the sweet trace of coconut from surf wax. Nora slid into the seat and opened the window a little. Warm air flowed in and caught loose strands of her hair. They drove along the dunes in silence. The road bent and dipped. Grass on either side bent under the breeze, and glimpses of the sea appeared between wooden fences like pieces of glass. A song played softly on the radio, a melody of guitar and low voice. Eli tapped his thumb on the wheel in time with it. Every so often, he glanced at her, then back to the road. She caught him once and gave him a small smile before turning her attention to the distant line of the horizon. As they rounded a curve, the small bottle of sunscreen at her feet rolled forward. She leaned down to retrieve it, and her hand brushed the glove box. The latch caught for a moment, then released. The door fell open with a muffled thump. An object slid out and came to rest between them on the seat. A bracelet lay there, plain and worn. The cord, darkened by time and salt, had frayed along its length. Eli's body went still. His hand stopped on the wheel. The easy rhythm of the drive fractured into a dense, charged silence. The music continued at a low volume, but it seemed to hold back as much as they did. Nora reached down, fingers brushing the sandy floor mat. She lifted the bracelet gently. "Sorry," she said. "I did not mean to open it." He did not answer at once. His jaw tightened, and a tendon in his neck flexed. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "It belonged to my brother," he said. She turned her head. He kept his eyes on the road, shoulders drawn, fingers closing more firmly around the wheel. "He is gone now," Eli added, almost in a whisper that rode on the hum of the tires and the sound of the surf beyond the dunes. The weight of what he had said settled between them. She did not ask how or when. She heard enough in the way his words thinned at the edges. She looked at the bracelet in her hand. It was more than an object. It held the mark of someone who had lived and been loved, and of someone who still carried that absence. In that moment, she recognized the shape of his quiet. It was the same depth she had known when her life had started to empty around her, even as she tried to stay standing. Silence that wrapped itself around memories instead of letting them go. She placed the bracelet on the dashboard with care, close enough for him to see, but not pressed on him. "Thank you for telling me," she said. He gave a brief nod. The tension in his shoulders eased only slightly, but it eased. The silence that followed felt heavy, yet it did not hurt. It felt like a space that honored what had been lost, rather than pretending it had never existed. They left the glove box closed and let the wind and the song fill the truck. Air streamed through the window, and the tang of salt settled in the cab. When they turned onto her lane, the last light was fading, and the sky held a dim, expectant glow. Eli slowed in front of the cottage and shifted the truck into park. Neither of them reached for the door handle right away. The low sound of distant waves carried through the open window. "Thank you for the ride," Nora said at last. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. "Anytime," he replied. He looked toward the sea, then back at her. "You did well out there today." She glanced at her hands, still marked with grains of sand. "I fell a lot." "That is how you learn," he said. "You fall, and then you get back up. That is what counts." The remark touched a place in her that had nothing to do with surfing. She swallowed. "Good night, Eli," she said. "Good night, Nora." Eli shifted the truck into park but didn't pull away immediately. He stepped out, rounded the back, and lifted her bike from the bed with an easy motion. The tires clicked softly as they turned, still dusted with sand. He carried it to the edge of her porch and set it upright, steadying it until he was sure it would stay. "There you go," he said, giving the handlebars a small tap with his fingers. "Ready for tomorrow?" Nora nodded, the gesture simple but warm. "Thank you." He offered a faint smile before returning to the driver's seat. She stepped back and closed the door, watching as the truck's headlights swept across the front of the cottage in a long arc of light. Then the beams narrowed, curved with the road, and disappeared beyond the bend. The sound of the engine softened, then slipped into the night until only the wind and the quiet, patient rhythm of the sea remained. For a time she stood in the yard, listening to grass rustle and a gull call from far inland. Then she went back into the cottage. The scent of wet paint and salt met her. The half-finished wall in the main room waited where she had left it. She picked up her brush and dipped it into the tray. The gentle drag of the bristles along the plaster calmed her. Each pass softened the uneven patches rather than hiding them. She thought of Eli, of the way he had kept his eyes on the road as he spoke about his brother. She did not know the story behind the loss, but she knew how it felt to carry something unsaid for so long that the words themselves seemed foreign. She understood the language of holding yourself together when you were not certain you could, because she had spoken it. Her fingers drifted to her ring finger. No mark remained, yet the habit of touching that place lingered. She let her hand fall back to the brush. Light from the lamp met the thin line of moonlight at the window and slid across the drying paint. The color shifted toward a cool gray that reminded her of the surface of the ocean before a change in weather. The surf moved in a steady rhythm that no longer felt distant. It sounded like a presence at the edge of the room. She smoothed one last section of wall. Her breathing matched the motion, slowing and deepening. It occurred to her then that healing did not always arrive with sudden clarity or loud declarations. Sometimes it arrived as two people sharing a quiet moment in a moving truck. Sometimes it arrived as a hand on a wall, a new color covering old marks without denying they had once been there. She rinsed the brush, turned out the lamp, and stood for a moment in the soft glow from the window. The hush of the tide reached her there, constant and patient. For the first time, the sound felt like a promise she could trust. The The distance began so quietly that Nora almost missed it. At first, it appeared in small gaps, a few extra hours between messages, a reply coming the next morning instead of the same evening. Nothing sharp or cruel, nothing final, just a steady thinning that felt like silence wearing a polite face. The first time he canceled a lesson, she read the text twice. "Sorry, cannot make it today. Weather looks rough. Next time?" She stared at the words, her thumb hovering as if a careful reply might pull him a little closer. "Okay, stay safe," she wrote. No answer followed. The next day, she went to the beach anyway. She told herself it was habit. The sun had already climbed high, turning the surface of the water into shifting pieces of light. The waves rolled in with a calm that should have comforted her. The only sign of Eli was a faint set of tire tracks in the sand that the wind had begun to erase, and a lone board propped against the fence by the shack. She stood near the shore until the hem of her jeans darkened, where the water reached for her ankles. A gull cried overhead. Farther down the beach, someone called to a child. The world continued with its usual ease, as if nothing had changed. Back at the cottage, another message waited. "Busy week. Hope you are well." She read it once, then again, searching for something underneath the simple words. A joke, a promise, any sign that he was reaching toward her rather than away. There was nothing there except what he had chosen not to say. The sea beyond her window kept its steady murmur. It sounded like a reminder that everything moves through cycles. Water comes in and goes out. People do too. She wanted to trust that whatever had drifted would return. But as she stood in the still kitchen, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock, she felt the familiar ache of absence settle around her. She thought of asking what had changed. She thought of asking whether it had anything to do with her. Instead, she set the phone face down on the table and let the questions hang in the room. She brewed tea and poured it into a mug. Her fingers trembled slightly as she wrapped them around the cup. Steam rose and fogged her glasses, turning the edges of the room into a blur. She watched the surface of the tea, waiting for the heat to calm her. When it cooled, she left it untouched on the counter. Even the sound of placing it down felt too loud. Later, she took the sander to the doorframe where the paint had chipped. The work gave her hands something to do. The device buzzed against the wood in a steady grind. She focused on the movement rather than the thoughts pressing in. After a while, the sound wore on her ears, and her arms burned. She let the tool slow and then clicked it off. The silence that followed was sudden and thick. She rested both palms against the frame, breathing shallowly. The echo of the vibration still tingled in her bones. The cottage seemed to pause with her, as if the walls themselves were waiting for her to decide something. She had promised herself she would not chase anyone again. Not after Adam. Not after all the ways she had tried to make herself smaller, to fit into spaces where she no longer belonged. She had sworn to stop confusing empty reassurance with care. Yet standing there, hands on the wood, she heard the old questions rise. What if staking meant standing still, while someone else slowly stepped away? What if the quiet she had worked so hard to build around herself became another form of abandonment, just slower and softer, but no less real? Her chest tightened. She thought of how easily distance had grown in her marriage. There had been no dramatic end, only tiny refusals. A message ignored. A look that slid past her. An evening filled with noise instead of conversation. The memory of that slow unraveling sat deep in her body. This time she did not move. The urge to reach for her phone flickered through her, then passed. She stayed where she was, breathing in the faint scent of sawdust and paint, feeling the solid weight of the house under her fingers. This place was hers, no matter who chose to step through its door. A shift in the wind brushed against the shutters with a softened sigh. The cottage seemed to release the breath it had been holding. She felt some part of herself answer. Then, a small vibration came from the counter. Nora turned. The phone glowed where she had left it. The single light in the room made it shine like a small beacon in the dimness. Adam's name filled the screen. The sight pressed against her ribs. She had told herself she was finished with that story. She had meant it. Still, her resolve wavered for the span of a breath. She crossed the room and lifted the phone. The call had already slipped to voicemail. A few seconds later, a text appeared. "Hey, I heard you moved. Hope you are okay." She sat on the edge of the table, the phone resting in her palm. The words were simple. They sounded kind on the surface, but she knew the cadence beneath them. He had used it for years when he wanted to ease his own guilt without truly changing. Apology shaped to look like care, concern that ended where effort began. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Reflex pushed her to smooth things over, to answer in a way that reassured him she was not angry. That old habit felt like muscle memory. She stopped. The phone trembled slightly in her hand. Slowly, she turned its screen down on the wood. The muffled sound of the ocean beyond the walls slipped in to fill the space that would once have belonged to her reply. A change in the wind brushed the shutters again. It sounded almost like another breath taken in her place. Nora closed her eyes and let the ache rise and settle. Perhaps staying did not mean waiting for someone to come back. Perhaps it meant learning how to stand her ground when they did. The air in the cottage felt too still. She stepped out into the evening. The door clicked softly shut behind her. Dusk stretched across Oceanview, painting the sky in muted silver. The light made it hard to tell where day ended and night began. The breeze carried a trace of moisture, hinting that rain might come later. She walked barefoot along the sandy path between the dunes. The cool grains shifted under her weight and smoothed out behind her with each step. Her thoughts moved at the same slow pace as her body, rising and falling, not rushing anywhere. The world around her had narrowed to a small collection of sounds. The low beat of waves on the shore, a lone gull calling somewhere above, the dry whisper of dune grass bending in the wind. Even the quiet thud of her own steps felt clear and separate. At the water's edge, she stopped. The sea stretched into the distance without acknowledging her presence. Waves rolled in and then slid back, leaving thin lines of foam that faded into the wet sand almost as soon as they appeared. She watched the water withdraw, watched the patterns it traced and then erased. A similar draw pulled across her chest, the same slow retreat she feared she was beginning to experience again, this time with someone she had just begun to trust. The air smelled faintly of rain and metal. It woke something sharp within her, not sharp enough to cut, but enough to keep her aware. Her throat tightened. This was not quite grief. It was the recognition of a familiar shifting, the feeling of something slipping away before you had the chance to hold it. The wind lifted her hair, let it brush her cheek, then set it down again. She closed her eyes against the sting of salt and old memory. She stood in the narrow space between one wave and the next, listening to the suspended quiet that held the beach. A thought rose from a part of her she was still getting to know. Stay. She did not step back toward town or forward into the water. She did not reach for her phone or try to fill the emptiness with noise. She remained where she was and let the ache move through her without trying to solve it. Staying hurt, but she sensed that leaving would hurt more. Farther up the coast, Eli sat in his truck on an overlook where the land fell away toward the sea. The storm from the night before had broken and moved on, but the sky still carried its residue in shades of gray. Fine drops of water clung to the windshield and caught the last of the light before sliding down the glass. The headlights cast pale circles into the fog with nothing clear for them to land on. He leaned his arms against the steering wheel and let his forehead rest there for a moment. The ocean below shifted in restless swells. It looked calm from above, but carried a weight he knew too well. The bracelet lay open in his hand, the worn cord pressing into his skin. His thumb moved along it in slow strokes. He had told Nora that it belonged to his brother. He had not told her that he had found it tangled in weed and driftwood 2 days after the water took him. He had not told her how often that day replayed when he closed his eyes. He curled his fingers until the cord dug into his palm. The pain was small and familiar. The true wound sat elsewhere, in the way the world had carried on afterward. The sky had remained bright. The waves had continued to break. The tide had climbed and retreated without pause. Nothing beyond his own chest had acknowledged that anything had changed. The radio played softly in the background, a simple melody half hidden by static. He did not turn it off. The sound kept him company without demanding an answer. His thoughts drifted to Nora. He saw again the way she had balanced on the board before the wave took her, the surprise in her laugh when she fell, and the way she had looked at the horizon as if searching for something she could not quite name. There was a quiet in her that called to something in him. It reminded him of the moment just before a wave broke, when all the force of it gathered in silence. He turned the bracelet over in his hand. The texture of the cord was rough against his calloused fingers. He knew that holding on to it would not change anything that had happened, yet he could not bring himself to let it go. Below the cliffs, the tide kept up its work, pulling the old water away and bringing in the new. The ocean did not pause, but it did not erase everything either. It reshaped what it touched. He watched it until his breath steadied. He was not sure he could call it healing, but it felt like the beginning of learning how to live with what could not be undone. Back at the cottage, Nora stood at the window with her cardigan pulled close. The small lamp behind her cast a warm circle of light. The evening beyond the cottage shifted into blue-gray tones. Her reflection hovered faintly over the view of the dunes and the distant line of water. She could feel the absence in the room as clearly as if it were a change in weather. The air seemed heavier, and the quiet sounded different now that she knew Eli was somewhere else choosing not to be here. On the counter, the mug of tea sat untouched, its surface dulled with a thin skin of coolness. Near the door, only one surfboard rested against the wall. The silence did not feel empty. It had a kind of presence to it, as if the house itself were listening. She looked at her own dim outline in the glass and whispered the same word that had come to her on the sand. This time, it felt less like a plea and more like a decision. Stay. Her breath touched the window and left a small, fogged patch on the glass. It faded a moment later, leaving a faint mark only she would notice. But it was there, proof that she had not gone anywhere. She remained. Evening settled over the cottage in a slow, gentle way. The last of the sun stretched across the windows and traced long shapes on the floorboards, touching glass jars, worn shelves, and the edges of objects that had finally found places to rest. The light made the room look softer, as if it had exhaled. The sea grew quiet, holding its breath in that way Nora had begun to notice before a change. The curtains at the open window stirred only slightly. The air felt thick and still. She sat cross-legged on the floor with her back against the wall, bare feet tucked under her. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. A single lamp cast a warm circle around her, and in that light the room smelled of salt, paint, and wood that had been sanded and left to dry. Everywhere she looked, she saw signs of the work she had done. The shutters no longer rattled when the wind swept past the house. The walls, once stained and patchy, now held a soft sea gray that calmed the space. The crooked table by the window stood steady on its legs. Two mismatched mugs rested on its surface, as if waiting for use rather than display. A plant leaned toward the glass, leaves glossy and healthy. A rag stained with streaks of color hung over the back of a chair, left there without guilt. The quilt she had bought in town lay across the couch, worn but clean, carrying the faint scent of lavender and distant salt. The cottage no longer felt like a temporary shelter. It felt claimed. She leaned back on her hands and listened. The house creaked quietly, not in complaint, but in adjustment, like an old body finding a more comfortable position. For the first time in weeks, the silence did not feel sharp. It held a sense of waiting that did not frighten her. A knock came at the door. It was not timid or forceful. It arrived with a simple certainty. Nora stiffened. The brush slipped from her fingers and tapped the floor. Her heart rose into the space between her ribs. Even the sound of the sea seemed to ease for a moment. She stood slowly and crossed the room, as if any sudden movement might startle whatever stood on the other side of the door. When she opened it, Eli stood on the porch in the soft glow of the evening light. His hair lay damp against his forehead, and his shoulders carried a tired set. His eyes met hers without any shield. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them felt like recognition rather than absence. "I did not mean to drift away," he said. His voice was rough, but it did not shake. Words rose to her lips. Habit urged her to say it was fine, to smooth over the distance and make it easier for him to step back into her life. That was what she had done for years with Adam. She had filled every gap, softened every edge, and made excuses for the silences until there was nothing left of her own voice. This time she carried the answer in silence. She held his gaze and did not move to rescue him from the discomfort of his own apology. She drew a breath, steady and measured, and stepped back from the doorway just enough to let him in. He paused long enough to slip off his flip-flops and set them neatly beside the door. The light from the lamp caught on the damp footprints he left on the floor, turning the shine of the water into a soft gold. The gesture felt quiet and respectful, as if he understood that the space he was entering had been hard-won. The air in the room shifted. The cottage seemed to release a breath as the door closed behind him. Nora went to the counter, where her paint and brushes waited. She let her hand rest briefly on the rim of the tin. Before picking up one of the brushes, she felt the weight of his presence at her back. The distance between them had not disappeared, but it no longer felt like a wall. It felt more like a space that could be crossed. She held the brush out to him, their fingers touched. The contact was small and quick, but it moved through her all the same. He caught his breath and gave a slight nod as he took the handle. "I do not have to help," he said, looking at the wall rather than at her. He remembered the way she had stood by the half-repaired cabinet days before, turning down his offer with a small, determined shake of her head. She had wanted to do the work herself then, and he had respected it. Part of him wondered if she would ask the same now, or if her invitation meant something had shifted between them. "I know," she answered. "I would like you to." Her voice held a steadiness he hadn't expected. It eased something in him he hadn't realized was tight. For a few moments, they stood side by side in a silence that carried more emotion than any speech either of them could have given. The hum of the lamp filled the background. The sea whispered its steady song against the shore. Eli dipped the brush into the last of the pale blue and drew it down the wall. Nora found another brush and joined him. At first, her strokes were cautious. His hand moved more easily. Gradually, her motions began to match his. Their arms rose and fell in a shared rhythm. The smell of paint mingled with the salt that seeped through the open window. The lamplight turned the damp color on the wall into shifting shades of silver and blue. When they stepped back to look at their work, the surface caught the light like water. "You chose well," Eli said. "The room suits it." "I needed something that felt calm," she replied. "Something I could look at and breathe with." He considered that, then gave a slow nod. "I think I needed the same." They set their brushes down. Both of them moved at the same time, then stopped. The silence that wrapped around them felt thick and full, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Eli looked at the wall, then turned toward her with care. He studied her face as though weighing whether to say more. "I did not think I would cross this threshold," he said. "Not tonight." She swallowed. "Something changed," she said. "What was it?" He held her gaze. The answer seemed to work its way up from a place he did not visit often. "That bracelet," he said. "It belonged to my brother. He always wore it when we went out together. I told him the tide looked wrong that day. He laughed and went anyway." He drew a slow breath and let his shoulders ease down, though the effort showed. "I found it a couple of days later, tangled in weed near the rocks. I kept it because I did not know what else to hold on to. It felt like if I let go of that, I would lose him again." The room grew very still. The only sound came from the steady rush of the water rising and falling like a long breath. Nora felt that rhythm move through her. It matched the pull in her own chest. The silence between them no longer felt like something to fix. It felt like something to honor. She had spent so much time trying to talk over her own pain, to tidy it away with explanations. Standing there with Eli, she realized how rare it was simply to share a moment like this without trying to change it. She stepped toward him, her hands unsteady but sure in intention. "I understand," she said. "I told myself my marriage was still alive long after it had gone quiet. I stayed in the same house. I cooked the same meals. I walked past the same closed doors and convinced myself that holding on meant I was strong. I told myself that if I did not leave, the life we had would come back." She let the truth sit between them. "In the end, it was fear," she said. "Fear of what waited on the other side of letting go." He looked at her with a softness that held both sadness and respect. "And what did you find there?" he asked. She glanced at the wall they had painted. The color still held the light. "This," she said. "Something new. Not the life I expected. Not perfect, but mine. I am learning to stay now for reasons that belong to me, not to anyone else." They stood in the glow of the lamp with the open window behind them. The sound of the waves moved into the room, no longer just noise at a distance, but a pulse that seemed to keep time with their breathing. They did not reach for each other. They did not have to. The connection between them did not depend on touch at that moment. Morning arrived quietly. Light slipped through the curtains and spread across the floor. The air carried the cool scent of salt and dried paint. 2 mugs sat on the counter, one with a small chip along its rim, the other smooth and new. Eli slept on the couch, one arm draped over his face, his expression more peaceful than she had seen it before. Nora watched him for a moment from her place by the window. His presence did not feel like an intrusion. It felt like something that belonged to the room now. She opened the window wider and let the sea breeze flow in. The steady sound of waves filled the cottage, the same rhythm that had guided her here, and, she suspected, would guide whatever came next. She stood there, breathing in the morning air, and felt no need to name what lay between them. It was enough to know that it was real. A few days passed after Eli returned, each one moving with the steady brightness of late summer. Mornings arrived in soft gold, and evenings cooled into the dim glow that made the sky look firelit at the edges. Yet beneath the warmth, the air carried an increasing weight. The scent of rain mixed with seagrass, and the horizon seemed to blur a little more each afternoon. By late day, the shift became impossible to ignore. The dunes fell still. The palms turned their pale undersides upward. The breeze changed direction and carried a faint metallic note that brushed her tongue. Gulls lifted from the pier and drifted inland, wings steady as they followed some instinct older than the town itself. Even the ocean seemed to gather itself, drawing in a long breath that never fully released. Oceanview held that collective pause she had learned to recognize, the town's quiet, held in the space before a storm. Nora watched the sky darken through the cottage window. Her brush hung in the air above the wall as the clouds deepened to a shade of gray that reminded her of bruised metal. The radio on the counter murmured its warning about incoming squalls and rising winds, but the words lost their shape under the sound of the rising gusts beyond the cottage and the rise of her own heartbeat. She closed the paint jar and wiped her hands on a rag. She moved from window to window, pulling shutters closed and gathering candles. Her motions were quick but lacked rhythm. The pressure in the air pressed against her skin in a way that felt almost personal, like a memory on the verge of returning. When she reached the window facing the dunes, a sudden blast of wind tore it open. Rain rushed into the room in sharp, cold sheets that stung her arms. She stepped toward it, shoulders tensed, and pushed against the frame. "Come on," she said through clenched teeth. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and the first roll of thunder trembled through the floor beneath her feet. A voice rose above the storm. "Need help?" She turned. Eli stood in the doorway, soaked from head to toe. His hair hung in wet strands, and his shirt clung to his skin. Water dripped from his fingers to the floor. He did not wait for a reply. He crossed the room, pressed his shoulder beside hers, and together they forced the window shut until the latch clicked. For a breath, they stayed there, close enough to feel the heat rising from each other's bodies in the cool air. Their chests rose and fell in the same quick rhythm. The storm answered with a low growl that made the house tremble. They moved through the cottage without speaking, securing whatever shifted under the force of the wind. She handed him a towel before he asked. He caught another window before it slammed. Their movements formed a wordless pattern. Reach, steady, catch, release. The cottage creaked under the pressure, but it held. Lightning flashed through the shutters and lit their faces for a brief second. Eli's expression set with focused calm. Nora felt her own jaw tighten with a mix of fear and determination. Thunder cracked overhead. She flinched, and the lamp flickered. Before she could find her balance again, Eli's hand closed around hers. His fingers were cold and damp, but the grip was firm. Her breath paused. The storm seemed to fall away for one suspended moment. His thumb brushed the back of her hand in a slow, instinctive motion before he released her. Another gust hit the cottage, and then the power cut out. Darkness poured into the room, thick and immediate. The roof rattled with the force of the rain. The wind clawed at the shutters, as if searching for a way in. Thunder rolled beneath the floor, deep enough to feel. "Power is out," Eli said. His voice came in low, steady tones. "I gathered," she answered, her laugh shaking as much as her breath. She felt along the counter for the matches. Her fingers trembled until one sparked. A flame appeared in the darkness, small and bright. She lit a candle, then another. Warm halos spread across the room and revealed the corners again. The light caught the water on the floor and the fading sheen on Eli's skin, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "That helps," he said as the flame steadied. "Almost peaceful." "Almost," she agreed. The storm roared as the candlelight softened everything in the room. The shadows stretched along across the walls, turning the cottage into a warm refuge surrounded by chaos. Eli leaned back against the counter and studied the candlelight, his hair curled as it dried at the edges. He let out a breath that sounded like something loosening inside him. "Looks like we are staying in one place for a while." "It could be worse," she said, glancing at the puddle forming by the front door. "Mostly dry." He looked down at the water on the floor and gave a quiet laugh. "Mostly." Their eyes met, and for a moment the noise from the storm faded. Only the candles flickered between them, painting the space with a living glow. The storm continued, but the room felt smaller, safer. Eli rested his palms on the counter and lowered his head for a moment, as if organizing his thoughts. When he looked up, his eyes searched hers in a way that felt new. "Sorry," he said. "I did not think the storm would build this fast." "It is all right," she said. "I have grown used to sudden shifts." His gaze held hers. The air between them tightened with a quiet, delicate charge. As he drew in another breath, something in his expression changed. "I thought I had everything held together," he said. His voice lowered. "But sometimes it takes a storm to remind you what you should not lose." Another rumble rolled through the sky. The rain softened to a steadier rhythm, as if listening. Nora stepped closer. Her heart moved with a feeling she recognized from the beach, from the first morning she had watched him teach the child, from the moment in the truck when he had spoken his brother's name. A voice within her, one she had tried to keep small, rose again with quiet certainty. "Then stay," she said. He did not cross the space between them. She did not either. They remained apart, and yet the room felt full. The air carried recognition, patience, and an understanding that had no need to rush. The candles flickered as the storm weakened. Shadows moved along the walls in slow waves. Nora felt her breath match the rhythm of the light. The fear she had held in her chest for so long loosened. The old ache of being left, the instinct to run before she could be abandoned again, all of it softened at the edges. She thought about how, when she first arrived, the quiet had frightened her. She had believed silence meant something was about to break. Now it gently wrapped around her like a language she had been relearning. The wind lowered in pitch. Rain turned from force to mist. The sea's roar softened into its steady pull and release. As the sky settled, Nora realized she had as well. Morning arrived with a clarity that felt earned. Fog lingered along the dunes, and puddles shimmered in the ruts of the lane. Nora stepped onto the porch with bare feet and felt the cool dampness of the wood under her toes. The air smelled of salt and cedar washed clean by the night. Behind her, Eli appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs. One was chipped, the other was new. Steam curled into the morning. They stood side by side in the early light. No words felt necessary. The tide rose in the distance with slow certainty, as if the world itself was beginning again. They let the quiet settle between them. This time it felt like peace. Late summer settled over Oceanview in a calm wash of gold and salt. Morning light arrived early now, slipping through the open curtains in warm ribbons that drifted across the cottage and touched each surface with gentle intention. The floorboards glowed. The jars along the windowsill caught the light and held it. Even the dust looked soft in the sun. The cottage no longer felt empty. It carried itself with a quiet fullness. The air held familiar scents of salt, coffee, and soap. Books lay open on the armchair, their pages curled from humid nights. 2 mugs sat drying on the counter, one with a chipped rim, the other smooth and new. A towel hung unevenly from a drawer, proof that mornings here had developed their own steady rhythm. On the porch, the rail shone under the light. 2 surfboards rested beside it, their surfaces still touched with salt from the day before. A breeze wandered in from the dunes, carrying the smell of sun-warmed wood and seagrass. The curtains lifted and settled, as if the house were breathing. It was lived in now, not polished, but whole. A place shaped slowly by daily choices and quiet commitment. A place reclaimed. On the shoreline, Eli watched Nora from a short distance. She stood in the shallows beside a young girl balancing on a board almost as tall as she was. The child bent her knees and concentrated, and the sea lapped gently around them. "Do not fight it," Nora called, smiling. "Just breathe and let it carry you." The girl pushed off. The board shook, then found the right line, and she moved forward on a small rise of water. Eli let out a laugh and clapped once. Pride carried on the breeze. The tide shone around them, with the brightness of something beginning. Farther up the beach, Lila leaned against the doorway of her cafe and polished a mug. Morning haze softened the edges of the world around her. When Nora glanced her way, Lila lifted her hand in a slow, familiar wave. It was the same gesture she had once offered Nora on her first day in town. "You will like her," Lila said quietly to no one in particular. "She carries her storms with purpose." Nora walked out of the surf, the foam brushing her calves. The breeze caught her hair and tugged at the pale scarf around her neck. The scarf had faded in the months since she arrived, touched by sun, wind, and salt. She untied it and carried it toward the cottage, the fabric cool and damp in her hand. She carried it to the windowsill and set it down. The light passed through the thin cloth and made it nearly translucent. The fabric lifted once on a passing breeze, then settled gently, like a small flag that marked the life she had chosen. In the reflection on the glass, she saw her face beside the scarf. The woman looking back was the same, yet changed, no longer bracing for what might disappear, no longer half hidden behind worry. Her expression held something quieter, a sense of belonging that did not need explanation. Behind her, Eli stepped into view and leaned a shoulder against the doorway. "High tide is coming in," he said. She turned and smiled. "I know." They stood together at the open window. The sea moved in its steady rhythm beyond the dunes, neither beginning nor ending, only returning with the same certainty it always had. The waves crept higher along the beach until they reached the porch steps, close enough to touch. Nora rested her hand on the sill and watched the water rise. It felt like a promise. Love, returning with the tide.